Thank you everyone for being here today. This is my presentation, really a kind of more general about my work that I do and how I got to where I am with it, really. I'm an author, an illustrator, mother, and I have a number of books, including Can't Not Won't, which was a Sunday Times bestseller, which was very surprising. And I will tell you a bit more about why that was so surprising later on. Um, but this is my website, by the way. If you want to have a look and you don't know where all my work is, this is my website, missingthemark.co.uk. And how I began, really, what I was doing, I began writing and drawing when my daughter was too ill to go to school. And actually it began with rage, I have to say. It was a realization that I wasn't getting any response to the situation where I was. It was outrage, and I'm a lot more confident now to say that and to share that there was those feelings. Those were feelings that I probably suppressed during those 8 years that we went through our experiences. And so here I've drawn myself typing. I would have thought it was a big deal if a child was unable to go to school. I'm writing my email there. But it was weeks of convoluted chain of emails with no one seeming to make any actual decisions. So I'd write these long, heartfelt emails with all the emotions I felt about a child who wasn't able to go to school. And then I'd get things back saying things like, "We are seeking advice on other items." And there I am thinking, meanwhile, Lexi is still stuck at home. So, very emotional emails and very non-emotional replies. So those feelings I had were still present and still there, and I needed somewhere to put them. Because it was during this time, after these 8 years of having a child who was too ill to go to school, that I was now at home. I'd become a full-time carer for my child. They were too unwell to go to school. And during this time, while caring for them, I was picking through all those emotions that I said I had, including anger and outrage. All those emotions, all those experiences. It was a time of, I would say, massive uncertainty and illness and stress. This is an illustration I did of how it actually impacted my physical well-being during that time. I began to suffer with quite extreme vertigo, and here I am on the dog walk with these feelings of utter overwhelm because I didn't know what was happening or where we were going, and feeling unwell as well as trying to be well. I was very unwell, and I realized I needed an anchor. I needed somewhere that I could put all this stuff, all these emotions that I was feeling, because I needed to be able to look after my daughter, who was actually unwell as well. And so it began very early on. I was just drawing from photographs. I felt I needed to go back before all this began. And that was before school and before nursery. And I was just drawing photos from photographs of my child when they were little. And then over that, I began to put memories of, as well as the memories that I was overlaying these disturbances that came into those memories. I should have sung to you more. I should have been stricter. I spent too much time with you. Maybe it was because my mum was ill. I didn't make you laugh enough. I should have put more boundaries in place. But I was trying to remember who we were before it all, before school. But I was kind of, while I was drawing this, I was interrupted by this guilt that I felt. So I was putting these in together. And then I decided I wanted to share more than that, actually. I wanted to share the actual experiences. I wasn't sure how much people, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about the external of other people, but I was thinking, how much have people seen about this, what it's really like? The difficulties we don't really show or share. And so these were drawings I did before and after going to nursery school and starting school. And here you can see my child's very reluctant to be handed over. The upset when I pick them up. And the bottom middle one is them really not wanting to leave. We had a safe space that we were offered that was a bit quieter at school, but it was still incredibly difficult. So I wanted to show all of that. And this was a little comic strip I did just about the prep for the mornings, because again, I don't know how much people saw all of this. And here's, why are you not getting ready for school? She's wrapped up in her duvet and refusing to get ready. She didn't want her breakfast either. Well, don't worry, I'll finish my tea and not rush off. Hey, what's up? We've got Miss Molan. They've changed the timetable and not told us it's Miss Molan this morning. How many times have we asked them to tell us when their timetable changes? I'll phone school. I'll wait and work late instead. Hi, it's Lexi's mum. She's a bit upset this morning and I wondered if Miss May was able to meet her when we bring her in. We're not sure who she is with this morning. Can we call you back? I've laid your clothes out ready. Hello? Okay. Thank you. Miss May can meet Lexi at reception. I'll try and get her moving then. And then this carries on. Putting the clothes out, trying to get them ready, breakfast not eaten, toothbrush, teeth not brushed, taking them in, dropping them with the teaching assistant, telling reception that she hasn't had any breakfast, and then giving me the advice that I should put a breakfast bar in the packed lunch. And there I am, leaving. Bad parent, late, tired, guilty, dirty teeth, no breakfast, never kisses me goodbye. And there I am, ready to start my working day. That's all before 9 a.m. in the morning. And, you know, I wanted to show this, how difficult these mornings were, how distressing they could be. This was one that I shared, I think this was on Twitter. I think a head teacher was saying something about just getting children, you've just got to get children to school. And I was thinking, well, how do you get a child like this to school? And then this became, this comic strip became a bad morning. Please, Lexi, get out. Take Inca out. Why is she doing this today? No idea. Shut up. Lexi, please. Sad, hurt, shame, anger. Sad, hurt, shame, anger. You can't do this. Shut up. And then me losing it with the pressure of it all. Everyone has to go to school. It's the law. Shut up. Meanwhile, trying to keep it all together, you know, trying to keep on this very fine line, this very thin tightrope of managing everything, and making sure that there were not too many variables. These were the first signs, I suppose, that school was really actually very hard for them. And I wanted to show those first signs that are very present there for families, before and after school usually, because in school you would often not see them, but at home that distressing behaviour was very much there. But in school they were fine. But it became harder over time to sort of keep this up. You know, she became sort of, what happened is over time, that sort of being able to seem fine in school became harder for them to engage in school. And this was a drawing of them not in the classroom. They were beginning to spend a lot of time not in the class, but outside the class in the hallway. And more time with the TA. And here I am with the TA, and the TA saying, I think they were meant to be going swimming at this point. That's fine, they can stay with me while they swim and we can do some jobs here. And I'm saying thank you. And this was how I'd often see my child when I went up to school for meetings, often on a spinning chair, computer chair, outside the classroom, blank-faced. So I was just going to open it up here. Sorry, there's still people coming in. It's quite distracting for me because the doorbell keeps going. I have to let them in. But I was just going to open up a little bit here. It'd be quite interesting to see sort of what your initial thoughts are really at this stage. Here, what you're kind of thinking about this, whether any of this resonates, or if you've sort of seen stuff like this yourselves, or heard this sort of thing before. But feel free to use the chat box and type anything. Someone's saying that they facilitate a parenting group for parents with additional needs, and this resonates with everything they say each week. Someone's saying it's just like their daughter, and this is their day-to-day in their personal world. Yeah, makes you feel sad. I mean, they do. It's, you know, that was another reason that sharing that stuff, the before and after school, because it's you know, people don't see it, people don't know what that's like. Very isolating. That's very true. You know, when you're dealing with that stuff on your own, it's very, very isolating. Yeah. Okay, I'll carry it on. So I got offered coffee mornings. So when I shared this stuff with the school Senko and other professionals, I got offered to go with other parents. Often these were with other parents with autistic children. And here we have one of the sessions. This was an actual session. That bit on the background behind the two support workers, it was actually a piece of blue tarpaulin that had been taped up on the wall with some tape, and it was all scrunched up. And eventually they would stick post-it notes on there about all our worries and struggles with our children. But it looked rubbish. And the reason I'm saying that is because I thought, come on, you know, if this is it, if that's the best you can do, this bit of tarpaulin, and it was things like that I started to notice over time. You know, that's partly my sort of surreal, wry humour, my coping mechanism, but these were the things that started to stick out. So anyway, this was a coffee morning that I got offered. And they're saying this is a session about letting go in a safe space. And they had a bucket and a ball that we could let go of and throw that ball into the bucket, and I'm thinking, I've never met these people. And here's Dan, and he's saying, I'm letting go of my child biting me this morning. My name is Annette, and I'm letting go of my child staying up all night and playing computer games. My name's Donna, and I'm letting go of our EHCP being turned down. My name is Eliza, and our half term was a bit lonely as Lexi didn't want to go anywhere. And, you know, there was a lot of focus on solutions, really, for autistic children. We were told that there would be these supports for children, just like our daughter, to be used in school, a home to school diary, a sheet that she could put the things that she liked on, and a sort of visual timetable. We also got offered an emotional regulation support tool, which they nicknamed where I live called Just Right. So the child could point to where they were feeling. So red was in feeling kind of leave me alone, they're in the red. Orange was they needed to move. Green was just right, ready to learn. And blue was in the blue, I look tired. And there they are saying they're really pleased with this. By the way, everyone got offered this. You know, we all joke, all the parents I know, did you get offered Just Right? Oh yeah, we got offered Just Right too. They're really pleased with it, saying so now when they're feeling red, they can say they're angry. And I'm thinking, why can't they just say they're hacked off? But yeah, we all got offered this. And I just went to so many meetings during this time. So many meetings. And some of these are one-to-one. And here are some of those. She can't get to sleep at night. Her brain just won't switch off. Why do you think that is? I mean, this half term she didn't want to do anything. Have you tried a family walk? Do you get much you time? And there I am just saying, I don't know. How about Lego Club? She needs more support. And then meanwhile, going to these meetings, there was my child alone in the corridor. And you can sort of see, I suppose, I'm building a bit of a picture here of why I called it missing the mark, because those things I was being offered, and it would probably seem like I was being offered quite a lot, but none of them were hitting the mark. They were all very much missing the mark. Nothing was referencing back really the amount of distress and isolation that my child was going through at this time. They just didn't seem to understand. We've worked really hard to get you this appointment, but that's your job. Well, we have to think about the taxpayer's purse. But I'm a taxpayer. Look, I'm not a doctor, but I think, here we go. We're really pleased, aren't we? Really pleased. Well, I'm not. There is a procedure that you've just made up. They just weren't seeing this level of what was going on for us. And apparently it was a lot to do with how anxious I was. One of the things that we have where we live is we have ASC supports, and they would come in once a term, and we were lucky if we saw the same person each term. Often it would be a different one. But once a term we would get sort of, I don't know how long, an hour maybe, with this ASC support to go through everything that was going on. And at the end of our school time, when things, you know, we were at home and things had broken down, I I contacted that support and I said, would it be okay to send me all your documents? Because I was trying to kind of get stuff together to look at kind of going forward what we could do, and you know, any evidence was going to be helpful. So they sent through what they had written during that time, all those times they'd met us, and it floored me, if I'm quite honest with you. It was a couple of A4 sheets of paper, handwritten, and this was what was written on it. Able, no problems in class, finds change difficult. Mum, extremely anxious. Dislikes sports day issue. Hides her feelings. Just right programme. Now it floored me because it was handwritten, because this was it. This was all that was written about our situation. Because it said that it was basically that I was extremely anxious. Mum's extremely anxious. Pushback. And of course they put right at the end, we're doing the Just Right programme. We're doing our bit. Interestingly, I work with a trauma therapist a lot now, who said, I would be very concerned if a parent wasn't anxious when this was going on. And I think that's a really interesting way of flipping this, isn't it? Because we often get told that it's parents' anxiety that is causing all of this. But actually, if you had a parent sitting in those meetings not concerned about this level of distress in that child, what would that say? It's quite an interesting way to flip that, isn't it? And this was when I was emailing the local authority at the time about these things going on for us and trying to get her there. Their email signature was this. This was their logo, which I copied for an illustration. Miss school, miss out. Very simple, isn't it? Just get them there. And it was a really isolating place. Someone mentioned that earlier. It was really difficult to kind of express all of this to family and friends. I had that disconnect with school, but then I had that disconnect with family and friends. And I nicknamed this cartoon The Ball, because it's me just kind of whittering on. And I think I said at the bottom of this, you know, I used to talk about the books I'd read or the films I'd watched, and now I'm just talking about this stuff that doesn't have a beginning or an end. You know, I didn't half of what I was saying at the time, it was just so long-winded and boring. It was boring as well. So, you know, those disconnects that were happening with the school, those disconnects were also happening with the people that meant something to me, friends and family. And here's some friends chatting about their weekend. Yeah, great, we've got a weekend away without the kids, we leave tonight. Lovely, well, it's been hectic. I am letting my hair down tonight. How are you? Yeah, I'm fine. Because actually I know I won't be doing any of that. I will have to be staying at home with my child. So again, you know, those shared experiences, I wasn't having those myself either. And while I was trying to sort of get this support, I was working with these systems that were completely baffling. You know, going back to that cartoon of the wall, that's me trying to explain these systems that I didn't understand myself. And I would find myself ringing different people all the time, you know, ringing these different people, trying to get people to help. You know, we had these inclusion support services, ASC support service, like Senko, SEN team, all different people. I didn't know how any of it worked. No one told me. I often say it's a bit like trying to fix a washing machine yourself. We're meant to know how to do this stuff. How? They didn't tell us that on the coffee mornings. And I'm hoping all the time for this understanding. There I am with my white flag saying sanity, trying to get back to the important things: friends, family, fun, telly, just watching telly, sleep. And through this fog of equality and understanding, funding, LA, school governors, complaints. And I was meant to have the answers. I don't know if they'll manage it. I don't know why they don't like the classroom. I don't know why it worked last week and not this week. I don't know if they'll make it tomorrow. I don't know if we should tell them. I don't know if they'll be all right. I don't know if they'll get to bed okay. I don't know if we can or not. I don't know if it was because of that. It might have been something last week. I don't know, as we only know at the last minute. I don't know. We can't plan it. I don't know. They can't tell me. I don't know when. I don't know why. Sorry. I don't know. I didn't know. But I was meant to have those answers. It's an awful lot of pressure. My child was also meant to have the answers. Here they are on a Zoom with someone they've never met. What makes you feel anxious? And someone else saying, well, how does it feel when you think about school? Nothing. You know, these people hadn't built up relationships with my child, and they all wanted to know the same thing. Why don't you like school? What is it about school? Awful lot of pressure. You know, big questions to ask a child who's very, very anxious and very worried about knowing what the right or the wrong answer is. It was something that was much more complex, much more nuanced. I spoke to someone, a young autistic boy, who we were talking about those feelings of school, and I said, you know, we were just chatting about, you know, going into school each day, and he said going into school each day felt like preparing for war, for the onslaught of what was to come, because there were so many things. And what I've come to realise is that many professionals want us to be able to specify a thing so that they can fix that thing. And actually, it's many, many, many things. It's a sense of that feeling, you know, it's that feeling of going into that. You know, it's not just, it's too noisy, here are some headphones. There's a lot more going on. It's complicated. And my daughter had friends. Friends that regulated her, who took that pressure off. This is actually still, how many years on I am from this? This is still the really tricky, this was a hard place that I was in. Seeing my daughter, this was the year 6 assembly. And, you know, obviously everyone's sort of sad, this is the end of an era, everyone's saying goodbye. But I remember sitting in that year 6 assembly and thinking, those were her mates. They were, despite all the difficulties, they were the ones that probably kept it going actually for her. And I thought, in that assembly, it hit me. I thought, I don't know what's coming next. You know, obviously there's secondary school. But that was a real hard-hitting realization. I had no idea what was going to happen next. The wheels were definitely coming off at quite a speed at this point. But it was difficult because at the same time, many of the professionals couldn't understand that school was school and home wasn't. This is something I drew with a psychologist about this, you know, because often professionals will say, well, you know, they went out the weekend, or, you know, they went to their club, or, but they don't understand that that's not school. And so they will think that things aren't that bad because they're able to manage some other things. but those other things will not have the pressure that school has. But while we had these other pressures, the hardest part of this was I could see that I was getting further away from my child. I was losing my child to the pressure of all of this. And these are the different professionals trying to help us, offering solutions, suggestions. And what was happening while that disconnect was going on, and so many other voices, opinions coming into this, my instincts were becoming diluted. I didn't know anymore. And here's someone saying, come on, hand them over, I see them. And that's my head, my heart and my brain there. And there I am thinking, maybe it's not such a good idea. Completely unsure of myself now. So I'll just bring it back to the chat. If anything's coming up for anyone during that bit. Yeah, I think the mum extremely anxious does come up an awful lot. Yeah, someone's saying it's very similar. I think you know, these stories are very similar. Yeah, the weight of support, but no one is actually able to help. Very difficult. It's very difficult when that support becomes another pressure. Very, very common. It is extremely common. So during this time, I showed some of these illustrations to a friend who was an editor, and she said, why don't you make a blog about it and, you know, see if anyone's interested? And I said, well, no one else is going through this. Why is anyone going to be interested? Like, this is like kids go to school. Like, anyway, I did what she told me to do. I think I set up a blog called Missing the Mark, and then I set up, I think, a Facebook page and Twitter, and it started you know, people were it was resonating. This brought me to tears after years of struggling. I feel lucky to have the experience of others such as yourself to guide me and to give me strength to say to the school, appearing fine doesn't mean fine. What you're doing is really important. Keep making noise. Blooming brilliant. I cannot express how much every word resonates with me. This is just so unbelievably spot on. I hear you, I am you, our life, thank you. Thank you for drawing my life. Nailed it again. I don't think I've ever seen anything more true in my life. How is it we all live in the same story? Your writing is amazing. It captures every moment. Thank you, damn. Wow, yes, this is just it. Yeah, and I just honestly did not know that there was people going through this. So this was, yeah, like, oh, suddenly maybe there are people like this, because I didn't meet those. I wasn't connected to those when I was at school. Those coffee mornings weren't for parents going through this. I didn't meet them. And you know, I didn't want people to feel alone like I did. I wanted, you know, to share these feelings we had. So I just kept sharing. And my life at this time, while sharing with this external world, had actually really shrunk. Like I said earlier, I had a child who'd had a breakdown. So, you know, I had this small actual world. Here I am looking out the window, my cup of tea, saying to my child, sorry, I should have given you more time to get ready. And they're saying it's fine. Now I am saying, Lou's coming over for an hour tomorrow, is that okay? Sure. Should we get out for some fresh air in a bit? Don't know. So my life was shrunk, but then I was connecting with others who understood all of this, and it was helping to reduce that guilt I felt. You know, it wasn't just us, it wasn't just me. And it wasn't all kind of built from rage, this stuff. You can see the rage very much in some of the things I showed you, but you know, there was humour in it too. You know, I wanted to say this system is ridiculous. And this was something I drew called the SEM Builders Get In. And there's this rickety old building made of training, assessment, maths, Ofsted targets, and all the things broken on the floor: relationships, inclusion, individualism, curiosity. And the builders are saying, I found some egg timers. Oh, I've got this whole thing of checklists. I've got this Lego club. We could just stick it on the side, stop the targets falling off. What about adding a couple of Juliet balconies? And I'm saying, for crying out loud, Dave, no, look. Should we just start the whole thing again? And here's a child holding up the school, and the nervous professionals around saying, oh, are you in the blue? We could try a little bit of OT or Lego club. This one I drew for Kathy Wassell's book for parents of children who've been diagnosed autistic. And I kind of took those different parenting courses we get offered and kind of wrote my own subheadings of what they really mean. So the Just Right programme, teaching your child how to mask so it makes our lives easier. Time Out for ASC, Yoldi course on what non-autistics think autistics are. Triple P parenting, you are a terrible parent, let's embed the parent blame early on. Preparation for secondary school, how to make your child go to school. Parents and anxiety workshop, you know we think it's you. Mindfulness for parents, madness is on the horizon, here's a scented candle. And I'm thinking I could just phone my mum. Actually, this is the only time my local authority did get grumpy with me. They said, you've got to stop saying things about the Just Right system and saying it's rubbish. And I said, well, it is rubbish. You use it in completely the wrong way. So I stood my guns on that one. They didn't like that. And I was trying to also say that all these supports were not reflective of us. They didn't reflect us as families, and they didn't see us. And here we are at home watching a TV show, mucking about. You know, again, that disconnect. We were all just lumped into this one thing. We all became very generic. And those well-meaning professionals didn't really seem to get us. And here I drew, we had a mental health support worker come and visit us. And I'm saying to my child, do you remember we have a visitor today who's going to ask a few questions about school and stuff? And there I am tidying up so they don't think we can't cope. My child's saying fine. And then 20 minutes later, I'm thinking, God, they're late, you know, tension's building, my child. And then they're saying, I think I see them. And there they are. I bet that's them, they're saying. And she was right. And here they are with their questions. Do you have any pets? Yes. What do you do at the weekend? Go out. Is mum someone you can talk to? Yes. What makes you worried about school? Don't know. Now, I have a checklist for you and mum to fill in. I like school. Yes, no, maybe. I like my friends. Yes, no, maybe. I get worried about lots of things, some things, nothing. Just do your best. And there I am saying a rude word about this. And I'm saying sorry about that. And I didn't know who this person was, what she did with that paperwork. I never saw her again. And meanwhile, I was left to mop up after that. Apologise for my child that they were asked. A heap of generic questions yet again. Who was that for? I don't know. And yeah, just open that little bit up. Who's had who else has had their fair share of checklists? Yeah, it does feel like a vicious circle. Yeah, great that we're able to maintain a sense of humour. Yeah, well, gallows humour, do we call it? I'm not sure. But it's important that we have that. It's for us, humour is a big part of my family, and we have to keep hold of that. Someone's saying lack of services is a huge problem, waiting lists that take years, and so many children lost in the system. Yeah, and I think like that example I just showed you then, I think that's the kind of buffer, if you like, isn't it? Those people that sort of come around, just go around there, pop in, do something for half an hour or an hour. It kind of is a buffer to sort of say they've done something. I don't know, but we do have to think about that impact that it has on our children, particularly when they're very, very fragile or broken. And being referred to things is not appropriate. Again, that's very difficult because we don't want to be seen to be putting barriers up to things and being told that we're putting these barriers up to support, but we also know our children the best, and we can often tell that those things might not be helpful. Yeah, there was someone's mentioning an article yesterday about the councils having huge deficits, and what some of them are going to be doing is going to be combining forces. So local authorities are going to, from what I gather, taking away more of the central government stuff, and they're going to be more autonomous. But they're also saying with that there could be potential that parents can't go down the route that they have been of sort of things like tribunal and stuff as much. So could be quite problematic. So during this time, I was contacted by a publisher to write a comic strip book about parenting a child with PDA. And for anyone that doesn't know what PDA is, PDA stands for pathological demand avoidance. Do you know what, I had a brain fog then because I was thinking there's another term now that people are using, which is pervasive drive for autonomy, which is much nicer, but the real term is pathological demand avoidance. So a young person or an adult with PDA, with a PDA profile, they are autistic, but they also have they feel a huge pressure of the external demands from others as well as the internal demands from the self, and those can be perceived or actual demands. They're very sensitive to pressure, high anxiety, and there'll be a need to control things when they're very anxious. And it will require adaptations and a real understanding from those around, as well, about the impact that the environment can have for a child or an individual with a PDA profile. This is a drawing of a child walking that tightrope with all those feelings underneath of fear, frustration, anxiety, overwhelm, shame, and anger. So it's really understanding how easily that brain can become overwhelmed, and that's what I wanted to show in the book. So here's a child staying with their headphones on. You can see their face, there's already that tension. And this is the morning before school. Bathroom smells of cleaning spray. Where's my favourite school shirt? Shorts are itchy, socks and shoes. I'm hungry but I feel sick. Eat breakfast, cereal's different from the normal one. Bananas smell ripe. His dad giving me a lift. We have a supply teacher. Leave the house, brush teeth, get dressed. Building up. Tension is building. And then something seemingly small as the socks can cause that brain to overload, and there'll be a huge meltdown, and then I'm not going. And this is based on real life that we experienced in our household. So it becomes about assessing a young person for their you've got to be really on it, monitoring every situation and their tolerance levels. So I drew this to really kind of show what that means for the book. So here's a young person where they have a very high tolerance level. They're relaxed, you know, they're playing with the dog. We can increase the demands. Can you clean your teeth, please? Here's a child in the middle where they're middle tolerance. So I've used indirect language there. Your toothbrush is loaded. And then very low tolerance. I've completely decreased the demands. I'll leave your toothbrush ready. I might not even mention brushing the teeth, to be honest. So, you know, we are constantly, as the parent carer, assessing that child and that tolerance level, which does fluctuate. So I wanted to do this as a kind of rewriting, if you like, for parents to sort of imagine how we need to parent, what they need. Because a child who is PDA and a parent carer who has a PDA child, we will need to create a much more collaborative, non-hierarchical, fun, flexible relationship with that sense of autonomy for that PDA. Can I run you a bath or shower? None. I love the new bubble bath. I bought it, it goes blue in the water. Okay, bath. Can I watch my phone in there? It's a good idea. Should we pop out in a bit later? What time are you thinking? Give me 10 minutes. How are you getting on? Okay. Yes, we're ready. Actually, I'm going to wear my other shorts. The seams in these are weird. No worries. Collaborative ways to communicate with minimal eye contact, side on. I wonder if, should we have a look at this? I can't do this very well. How about, that's a good idea. What's the best way? We could always. And it's the same with the learning environment. So what we do in the home, those approaches, we need to see the same or as similar as it can be in the learning environment. What should we look at today? Maths. No. I need to fix my chair. Why? Keeps doing this. I think we forget maths and get me a new chair instead. Let's see. Very different, isn't it? Very non-hierarchical. Very different way of doing it. We've got to be very flexible. You know, this is a learning facilitator, as I like to say, rather than a teacher. Very much meeting that young person where they're at. They could see that there was tension there around doing the maths. They could see there was tension. That maths wasn't going to happen. Let's just do something else. Because otherwise you've got this. This is what I lived with for a very, very long time. And I really liked writing this book. I think everything I had read about PDA, everything I'd heard about PDA, and there's still lots of it along the same narrative line, it's very gloomy. You know, there's lots around, you know, your child will struggle to get, you struggle to get your child to engage in anything, they won't end up doing anything. And I didn't believe this. I could see that when you changed your sort of perceived ideas around a child, your child could thrive. It was a bit busy there today for me. Yeah, same. We have to make those changes. We have to be who they need us to be. The inactivity, the silence, that was all anxiety. I knew my job, our job, is to reduce that. Our children need to be able to say no before they can say yes. So I wrote this book and filled it with the fun and the humour, all the bits that I knew had been missing from those coffee mornings I used to go to about parenting. And parents have said it sort of really resonated with them, and it's worked for their children with or without a diagnosis. And a lot of professionals as well have said that they've, learned quite a bit from it, which has been good. There's a few reviews here. Thank you. This book is an absolute game changer for any parent considering it. Buy this book now, you won't regret it. The topics will resonate with the lived experiences of many parents and carers. Eliza's writing also offers reassurance around months or years of attempting more traditional parenting strategies. It's significant that one of the final chapters notes how long it can take for these children to feel safe and supported, and how important it is for parents and carers to look after themselves in the long term. Reading this book today was one of the most emotional moments of my life. Suddenly, we're not alone. So it's connection, flexibility, interest-based learning, self-determination theory, self-directed schools. That's all the bits I'm going to be going on to. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. So, interestingly, that time at home, which obviously was isolating and difficult and stressful, my child hadn't been well, but this, writing these things that I was doing that were helping my child, as well as kind of they were getting out there to other people, all this stuff was working together really at the same time. Someone's saying PDA isn't a recognised diagnosis here, which makes support even harder to access. Yeah, it's true. PDA, pathological demand avoidance, is not in the DSM-5. So there's some very boring books on, I think they're even called things, one of them's called, it has mental disorders in it. Very lovely titles. Anyway, these DSM-5 and things are the things that they use to diagnose children with things like autism and ADHD. And PDA is not in there, which can often leave parents in a very difficult situation where there's a real barrier then to kind of access support, because they'll say, well, I think my child's PDA. Oh, well, we don't talk about that here. Immediate shutdown. So my handy hint around this, always find your way around things. I don't ever mention PDA, but I give the whole profile of PDA without mentioning PDA. So I will say, you need to use indirect language, do not use direct praise, all the bits and bobs, all the important nuggets, the bullet points of PDA without mentioning PDA, which can really help. Or, sometimes I'll even say things like, I'm using a very child-led holistic approach, and I'll say that at the beginning to professionals to stop them sort of giving me kind of behaviourist approaches which aren't going to work. So they know what page I'm on, and hopefully they are on the same page. And actually often it's really good to give them that heads up first, because it's really helpful for them to know that those things that they've been given, which someone was telling me who works at Great Ormond Street, that a lot of that behaviourist stuff is like positive behaviour support is still the go-to. So if you say, well, actually that hasn't worked, but this has worked, it can be really helpful. Trying to break away from these traditional parenting methods can mean lots of people don't understand why aren't you in control of your child, you're the adult. And those things really, those thoughts as well, when they've, when people have said those things, they come in, don't they, and they kind of make us wobble. I think we lose our confidence again when we get told those sort of things. One of the people that endorsed that book, The Family Experience of PDA, was Dr. Stephen Porges. And I don't know if any of you know his work, but Dr. Stephen Porges, which is Porges, worked a lot on this theory around the polyvagal theory. And I know we have to all find our own way through this, but for me, that stuff really chimed, and it really I felt like, oh yeah, this really helps. having a child who's neurodivergent, what he talks about are the three main states: the ventral vagal, the sympathetic, and the dorsal vagal. And he talks about how our brain moves through those three main states through the day. You know, we can kind of feel like we're a bit stressed one minute, and then we can kind of have a bit of lunch or a cup of tea and calm down. And anyway, we move through these different states. And for our young child, or our child rather, when they spend sustained periods of time in an environment, that stressful brain can get stuck. It's unable to move through those various states. So the brain stays in a place that is prepared for the worst. It can feel under threat at all times. Stop fussing and tell me how we multiply fractions. This is trauma. When your brain is in that high stress and unable to get out of that, it becomes trauma. And so understanding that, my work developed. As I understood more, I was able to provide what my child actually needed to heal. The more I read about this, the more that resonated, the more understanding I got. I was learning what my child really actually needed. I started to look at how we heal, how we have these green shoots and these glimmers. It was really small, that healing process. It was maybe getting a drink of water for the first time when they'd been in bed for a very, very long time. Being able to talk again. A lucidity that wasn't there before. Maybe even watching a TV show together. This was the nervous system almost resetting. We'd removed all that distress. And it was about making her brain feel safe again. Building blocks to recovery, slowly. You know, this is a child who felt like this all the time. You know, and as adults, we don't see that. We just see that child and we try and deal with that. And actually what my child needed was a very, very different approach after that level of trauma and that sustained amount of time that her brain had been in that place, which was about 8 years. And so these were the kind of, as I said, those stepping stones, and I drew those, you know, starting with very little activity. Maybe then we started watching something, and then maybe they kind of came out of bed, and then we looked at other things, and then I suggested something else happening within the home. These are very slow building blocks, all happening within the safe space, home. And I wouldn't say it goes up those steps all the time. I would say you go up and then you maybe come down and maybe go up a few and maybe come down one, and you know, it's not linear. But I wanted to share all of this, show these different ways that we can, you know, start to find a bit of hope, really. How we heal together, how we both became more rested and restored, and actually what our child needs can work for us. And here we are, climbing over trauma, all those difficult bits of trauma closed off, avoidant, anger, hypervigilant, defensive, inflexible. And we're climbing into this new place. I'm saying, I know, I found that hard too. Sharing these new ways to live and learn. Here we are late at night. I might try it anyway, it sounds good. Yeah, it does. Just having little chats, thinking about what we could do together. And I began working with others, other professionals who wanted to share their knowledge of the neurodivergent learning experience too. We worked on a book called Square Pegs, which is really interesting. The organisation themselves are actually called Square Pegs. This is a book as well about children who find school difficult and different professionals offering different ways for those young people. And then I began a webinar series with Dr. Naomi Fisher, whose background is she was a trauma therapist. She worked as in a diagnostic clinic as well for the NHS, but she's also worked as a trauma therapist. So she's worked with lots of different people who have experienced trauma, and then she could see that the young people, the children who are talking about their school experiences, were the same. You know, they had trauma, just like the people who had been in, you know, other very difficult situations. They were showing the same signs. So we started to work on these webinars, which we called the Art of Low Demand Parenting. And we, rather than made it something around diagnosis, we talked about parenting a child who's pressure sensitive, because we felt that that would be a way that it could encompass lots of people and not separate people out, in the sense that, you know, as we know, it takes a long time to get a diagnosis. Other people don't want to go down that route of diagnosis. And also there are lots of different reasons, as well as diagnosis, that a child can be pressure sensitive. So it's not just autistic children that are pressure sensitive to pressure. And we found we had lots and lots and lots of parents joining this, or needing another way. So some of the people have said here, this has been the most useful thing I've had since my son was 4 and he is now 14. One of the most interesting and insightful sessions on anxiety in autistic children that I've seen. Really helps me understand my child better. Such a relief to be at the excellent low demand parenting seminar by Naomi Fisher and Eliza Fricker last night. Joy at not being alone in the journey and grateful for the validation. And that's very much what we wanted to offer, those missing bits from earlier on when I talked about what was missing from those coffee mornings for parents. We wanted to do something very different. And we talked a lot about that, what wasn't there, and validation was not there. And so, you know, that was very much what we wanted to bring, the missing bits. And these families all needing a different way. And this was used actually for the front cover of the book based on those webinars. Here's the naughty step, which we've all been told to do at some point or been suggested. And here's the parent saying, come on, all you need to do is say sorry. We've been here 6 hours. And the child saying no. Because we are parents who have tried. Don't get us wrong here. We have all tried those traditional parenting ideas, suggestions, and they don't work for our children. So we must have a different way, must find another way. And we need hope. We've all had an awful lot of judgment and shame, actually, as parents, and we need to find a more hopeful way, and that's very much what a lot of my work is about, is hope. And oh yeah, I had to get this one in. This is some of those books. This was based on when I used to go into the bookstore to find books that would help me on my parenting, and not feeling like any of them would work for my child. How to make them healthy, good sleeping, healthy meals every day, routines, why do it, children who do chores, get tough, be kind, how to be a boss parent, no means no, a guide. And thinking, I don't think any of these will work for my child. And there's the parents feeling guilty with their backpack of expectations, shame, blame, judgment, future, society, and parents thinking, why is this so hard? And the child's got anxious, unhappy, lonely, thinking it's all my fault. Here's Naomi and I with our principles for the book, which were the REACH principles: relationships, environment, active involvement, collaboration, and humour. So finding new ways to do this. And we had this, I think it's at the end of the book, which is a parent and child looking towards the future with calm, trust, self-worth and connection. And the child saying, it looks nice. And the parent saying, yeah, it does. So hope. And that's the webinars became this book, When the Naughty Step Makes Things Worse. Parenting for children and adults who need something different. And then, as I said at the beginning, Can't Not Won't became a Sunday Times bestseller. So that isolation and disconnect I felt, I very much realised that there were lots of us. So I think it sold out 3 times pre-publication. And I think I finally realised it wasn't just me by that stage going through it. Cannot imagine any family in this situation who cannot recognise this painful and often harmful journey, beautifully conveyed in so few words. That's Lisa Cherry, who works very much around trauma-informed systems. And Dr. Ruth Moyes. Eliza's words and thoughts deeply resonate with me as a parent. Each afterword beautifully articulates what a good school that values autistic pupils would do, and importantly addresses how the issue can carelessly be avoided. I was very lucky to have Tom Vodden, who is a Senko school governor, who wrote a really helpful bit at the back about what schools can do, and another person who works for Pebbles Autism Service, and she, Sue Moon, she wrote a really nice bit about, again, what schools could do to help children. So it's not just my illustrations. I wanted it to also offer people some hope and support as well, and hopefully professionals to read that if they don't want to read all of the book, but see that there are things that can be done a bit differently. And then, obviously Facebook, it's an old screenshot, I think it's 60,000 on Facebook parents who kind of interact on there now and can share and offload. And then oh yeah, I forgot this one. This is just another bit about people sort of saying how helpful it's been. Oh no, this isn't. I'm sorry. This is about my own diagnosis. Sorry. What I was going to say is it then led on to me getting my own diagnosis. So I have that was a very ADHD moment, wasn't it? There we go. My own diagnosis of autism and ADHD, which was a few years ago, which came after my daughters and after all of this. And this was what my psychologist said at my diagnosis. She wrote this thing for me about my own diagnosis. You shared with me your insight, openness and creativity. I was delighted to hear about your passion for writing and drawing. Thank you for providing me with such an in-depth and nuanced information about yourself and now and in the past. On Zoom, we explored your life experiences and individual traits, which helped me to understand you and your perspective on the world. You have clearly worked exceptionally hard to reach where you have in your life while dealing with additional challenges that other people do not have to deal with. You've created a life that you can thrive in, working to your strengths in creativity and surrounding yourself with understanding and kind people. I hope with this improved self-understanding, you will continue to thrive in life. And so I started to write about explore my own difficulties through the medium that works for me, drawing and writing. So I wrote a book called Thumbsucker, which explored my childhood, not knowing I was autistic, and exploring what my childhood was like. Here I am trying to drink milk at school while feeling like I'm going to throw up. And this was a poem that I wrote for the book about my own experiences. So I used different titles of names that I was called through my childhood, and tried to reframe those and rewrite those from my own perspective, take ownership, if you like, of those names. And this one of the names I was called was Difficult. And so I wrote, I didn't want to ruin days out or spoil holidays. I didn't want those meltdowns to be remembered more than the sun or the beach or the time we had a villa and a pool. I wanted to have a good time, but I knew I was the one who spoilt stuff, who made others sad, angry and upset. I confused people and I disappointed them. Why couldn't I just eat the sandwich? It was cheese and bread just like I have at home, but it wasn't. It tasted different, and I was already tired, sunburnt, confused and anxious. I didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't because I didn't want to have a nice time. I didn't want to upset you. It wasn't just the cheese sandwich. It was all too much. Homesickness. Here I am at a sleepover, not wanting to be at a sleepover. And there's the other name. So these are the sort of names I've been called through my childhood, and those became the titles for the book chapters. Giving myself a voice, I suppose. And I also put in my school book, which have all my doodles in there, which was my way of self-soothing, I suppose. And yeah, it was, I think people get told off for doodling, don't they? It's not really allowed to do it in school. We didn't know about self-soothing and fidgeting and fidget toys and any of that, so this was what I used to do. And again, that was sort of, yeah, I just wanted to rewrite all those things. We carry a lot of weight with these things that aren't valued or dismissed. And I could see how that happened for my child. And then when I was in a better place, my child was in a better place, I was able to explore those things for myself too. Family holidays, my meltdowns, and people not understanding why it was too much for me to go on holiday and have a new experience that everyone thought was fun, but for me was too much to cope with. As my dad saying, well, we better fly home if it's going to be like this all holiday, because I always support those holidays. And this is from my fear of dogs, and me not being able to go into the place where we're meant to be staying because they had a dog. Warrior. So that was my book, Thumbsucker. This was my whole life, because when your early self is seen as not good enough or difficult, you hide it away and become what others perceive they'd like you to be. So I'm slowly learning to be me with the help of those who really see me for me, and this feels lighter, clearer, better than I've ever felt in my life. And being honest and open and sharing what is hard when I feel things are hard, and I'm trying not to be perfect anymore. So, drawing has healed me by giving me a voice to share these experiences, say how it was for me, for us, for others. Created this connection and this community, and the things that are important to me, insight, wit and empathy, I've used those, all of those things with my work, and yeah, it's been really, I feel very fortunate that I'm in this place. While it hasn't been easy, it's been, a really amazing place to get to, really. In Thumbsucker, Eliza Fricker shows us the complicated and often painful experiences that too easy labels allow the people around us to dismiss, when what is needed is understanding. And I've just handed in actually the follow-up to this, which is Late Bloomer, and that's about my teenage years before I hit my mid-20s. So I worked up to, we now realise people's brains are not fully developed till they're 25, so I've written this book up till then. This is about my teenage years and what that was like, secondary school. But just, I'm hoping that it kind of gives people that opportunity, maybe parents, but children, young people alike, to kind of find something that resonates with them. And yeah, that is it. But they're all hopefully offering you fresh, hopeful perspectives on how we parent. How we support and understand ourselves and young people better. Meanwhile, my child has turned 17 this year, and they are regulated, engaged, funny, bright, brilliant, and that is actually a big deal when you don't think your child is going to make it. And here I am saying, I've remembered my SPF cream, and they're saying, yeah, well done. The sarcasm is still there, by the way. But we are living a much more authentic, gentle, happy life. We're in a happier place. Here we are in a hot air balloon. Maybe over here? Sure, let's give it a go. Side by side, guiding, learning together. Messy bedroom, by the way. But we're learning this stuff together and we're breaking old cycles. And here's my old cycle of perfectionism, guilt, micromanaging, fixing, people pleasing, overcompensating, fear of failure, lack of boundaries. My child saying, yeah, I think I'll give it a miss. And just to end, as it is Pancake Day, very excited about that, is my poem about pancakes. Healing. Healing didn't come from egg timers, access to a sensory diet, a timeout card, meetings or books about autism geniuses, people just like you. Healing didn't come from meetings. Healing didn't come from a home to school book. Healing didn't come from a hub. Healing didn't come from group therapy or a checklist. Healing didn't come from people we only ever saw once. Healing came from watching telly. Healing came from mucking about. Healing came from being together. Healing came from staring out the window. Healing came from pets, slippers, cushions, sofa. Healing came from pancakes. And there we are, making pancakes. And I'm saying, oh, I've burnt this one. My child's saying, oh, that's your one then. And that is it. Shall we open up to questions?
Eliza, we had a question quite early on that I wanted, I made a note of because it's quite a way back. But the question was, do you know what support or help you would have wanted and that might have helped?
I think professionals can often be quite scared of validating, I know that word gets bandied around, but validating those experiences or that distress that we're feeling without seemingly offering something. But I often say that if someone had said during that time, you're not the only family going through this. If someone had said there are other options out there, or school isn't for everyone, I think just having that space where someone opened that up to thinking, okay, it isn't just get them into school and that pressure and that isolation that we were the only ones, I think would have made a huge difference. What is the new book called? I've got, well, then a different kind of parenting, and then Late Bloomer is going to be the follow-up to Thumbsucker, but that's not out until next year because it's just gone to the editor now. Seeing here. Someone's saying about the poem difficult. Yeah, I think we feel awful, you know, I think it's really important to understand that this stuff that we do or our children do is not deliberate to make parents unhappy. And I think that's really important to remember. There is always something else going on. And I think, you know, this is something Naomi and I do in our webinars, is we talk a lot about how much of this kind of behavioural approach with children is about just seeing that behaviour and dealing with the behaviour. You're not dealing with what's going on underneath. Is there any other questions?
Can I just say what somebody had just said in one of the chats there, Eliza? Karen had mentioned, and I think, as you know, a lot of practitioners will say the same thing, but in this time where we currently are, we're told the school is one of the only options. And, and I think it's fair to say lots of people will probably agree that, we know the system is broken. We know it's fraught with difficulties, not only for neurodivergent children, but often neurotypical children. Where do we go from here? When we're told parents have to work, children have to go to school, and you have to work as a parent in order to able to financially afford where you're living, maybe, and to survive. What are the options?
It's
What do you
really,
do?
really hard. And I think, I certainly used to think, it was home or school. I now know that there's lots of other ways that parents go. And actually, I'm also mindful that that it can sound like a place of privilege to say, well, don't send your child to school then, just have them at home. That isn't often an option for a lot of us. In my situation, and a lot of families I speak to, the devastating result of for a lot of our children is it's a forced hand. Our children become too unwell to attend school. And while it's a horrible thing to say, if you think about your child is run over by a bus and breaks their legs, that's the situation that myself and many parents are in. Our children are too unwell. You cannot make them go to school. That the impact of that trauma means they have had a breakdown and they are at home. And I hear from parents who have to make very radical life decisions around that because their children are too unwell. One parent will give up work, disability living allowance, all kinds of situations. It's very, very difficult. However, while that is, devastating, I also know that when a child becomes well again and is healed, that many parents try a different way for their young people. And some will go down a sort of trauma-informed school. Those are few and far between, but there are some settings like that are trauma-informed. Some have a package of support at home if they have an educational healthcare plan. You have to get researching and get creative with those options. But I think even with those options, even when you find something, it's really important that you don't rush that and don't go into that too soon. Your child will need time to recover and repair. And like I said, those are stepping stones. I mean, I talk about doing those stepping stones to healing in the home first and foremost. We're often rushing to get them out even for a walk. Just start in the home and bring things into the home before you even consider anything external. It's a slow process for sure. But there are other options out there. I mean, you can even look on your local authority will have a page that is alternative provisions, and sometimes things will pop up there. So do some research, I suppose.
There is a. Are you still with us?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep, thought you froze. And a couple of questions come in. So somebody first asked, what changed for you and your daughter?
I mean, I suppose, getting this understanding and learning, like I said, was really important to understand that we needed something different, different approaches. And all of that had to work in sync, like I said earlier, for example, if you do need to kind of approach your child with a different way, such as, a non-behaviorist and more of a kind of low demand way or holistic way of parenting, that can offset enormously that school day. Even if you do things like thinking, we were not going to make them sit at the dinner table, or we're just going to let them, spend the evenings decompressing, and that can have a huge positive impact to offset that school day. But also for others, it can be really important that in our case, everything was kind of working in sync. We had to have a kind of what was happening in the home and how we were parenting that had to be mimicked in that learning environment, and we had to find things that worked in a similar way. And for me, I didn't want to have to micromanage that environment either. I didn't, I'd spent 8 years doing that. I wanted to be able to hand over the reins, and, eventually we did a few different things along the way, but eventually we did find a trauma-informed setting. And I still remember that day. I talk about it on the podcast I made. I still remember that day going in there, and I completely broke down. I think the head teacher was even a bit shocked. And I said, I feel like I can let go, and that was massive, because I had been doing it all, and it was really nice to say, I can just be a parent and they're going to do that other bit for me. And that was massive. So, that's been huge. And I know we were very lucky to find that, because as I said, they're very hard to find, those sort of places. But
yeah, often parents say that to us. It's quite difficult to get into an alternative provision. Certainly almost impossible without an EHCP. Lauren has asked, what advice would you give professionals trying to support families going through this, other than listening and validation?
I think potentially, when for families, we can feel that there aren't options, and I always talk about having options, and I think giving those suggestions to families that it's good to think of options. And I've drawn ridiculous options, and shared those, when things felt really bleak and there didn't feel like there were many options at all. I thought we were going to go and maybe live in a camper van. I didn't own a camper van and I can't drive. That's how ridiculous it is. I thought about we were going to live in a wooden hut in Scotland. I've never been to Scotland. I don't know why I even thought of Scotland. But I had to create these kind of options, if you like, because it was really important. And I've since heard, having now working with a psychologist a lot, that that's a very good and helpful thing to do. And that's something a psychologist often suggests to people who feel stuck, is to think of options. And I say that now when I speak to families, think about different options, think about if you could wave a magic wand over this and then work back from that. And I think we often just think it's school or home, and that can feel quite bleak. And so if professionals can work a lot more with parents, to come up with ideas and options. And I work, it's up there actually, The Educator's Experience of Pathological Demand Avoidance. I wrote that book with Laura Kirby, who was a head teacher. She's worked in specialist and mainstream schools. She now runs a tuition service for children who aren't able to go to school. Many of them do have a PDA profile, and she's one of those that just gets it, by the way. Very, very knowledgeable, and she has lots of practical advice about what schools can do. And actually, even within mainstreams, that will vary hugely on what schools will offer. And so even in that sense, I think for parents to know that if you go to a school and they say, no, you have to do the homework, no, you have to wear that full uniform, no, you have to do PE, nip it in the bud there and then, because what you actually need are those schools that are going to be really flexible. And this book, which is out, that I illustrated for Naomi Fisher and her sister, who's an educational psychologist, is all about different schools, many of whom are in the mainstream, who have also done very creative things to help children. And so there is hope. It's not just, school doesn't work. Lots of schools are trying different things, and so finding those schools that are willing to be really flexible, really creative with this, and who are going to start early and not wait till the wheels fall off. Because if you wait till the wheels fall off, you're on a long road to putting them back on, I can tell you.
Eliza, could you tell us the name of that book? We couldn't quite see it when you held it up.
It's published by Routledge, and it's called What Can We Do When School's Not Working? So it's very heavily illustrated, but it's very practical stuff, and it's actually aimed at professionals. But I think parents will obviously read it because they want to feed that stuff back to schools as well. And it's out the what date is that? 21st of April. So
Brilliant. Thanks, Eliza. Jack has said that after 6 months out of school, my son asked to go back halfway through year 10. Although still a little challenging, he is now thriving in college, not academically, but so much in other ways. So, really listening to her child, taking her child out, and actually collaborating about when they go back. Exactly
yeah,
what you were talking about.
absolutely. You know, like I said, it's not that school doesn't work and you have to not, you know, for many it can be a break and then a re-entering. And I think a reset can be really important for a lot of young people. And I've heard when Laura and I wrote the Teens Guide to PDA, a lot of the teens that we interviewed for that book who have a PDA profile came to the book launch, and lots of those are absolutely thriving. You know, particularly because what you have to remember is that for many children or young people who've experienced trauma, what they do need is autonomy, and with age comes autonomy naturally, and particularly when they go to college, they are choosing what they want to do, you know. And I can say that about myself as well. You know, I was given like an hour a week of art, which was where my passion was. I was given lots of science and maths where my passions definitely were not. And so when I left school and could go to art college and do the things that were important to me, that made a world of difference. So for neurodivergent learners, it's really important as well that they have the opportunity to really kind of get into those special interests, and often that happens when they go to college.
Eliza, you happy for me to sort of give a couple more questions out? I'm
Yeah, yeah,
mindful of
yeah.
time
Okay.
and okay. Karen, apologies, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. A good, inspiring presentation, and is interested to know, would it be suitable to share with teenagers
Yeah, I think there
what
was
you
one
spoke
swear
about?
word in this, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I think that would be fine. I mean, yeah, don't see why not.
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges for parents is deprogramming what we have been programmed with about school and the behavioural approach.
Really hard. And, you know, I'm not, any of the work I do is not aiming towards becoming a perfect parent by any means. You know, we will always have these little wobbles and these doubts that creep in because, you know, the most of what we see is behaviorist. You know, even when I remember going even to look at special schools and thinking they'd be different, but they're still based on a behavioral principle. It's very hard to find different things, and that's why, you know, hopefully kind of finding others that you can connect and get strength in numbers, if you like, because it is very difficult. And I was saying the other day, I don't know when that ever stops. You know, you kind of have, I don't know, SATs, then you've got, you know, GCSEs, and then it's A levels, and then it's what degree, you know, those questions come at you all the time. And sometimes it's hard to back them off, those generic questions, particularly when we've not had a good week or whatever it is. And our confidence might be a bit in the dipping. It's very difficult. But hopefully, you know, our confidence grows as we see that our children start to find their own way with this and feel more comfortable, and that in that kind of increases our confidence with our parenting along the way. But it's not easy, going against the grain.
It is really tricky, isn't it? And I think certainly as a practitioner myself, hearing you talk today from your personal experience and the books that you have out there, I think there is so much hope, and it is about sharing that with parents and sharing that with family. Is that, sometimes when you get a diagnosis or you're trying desperately to get a diagnosis, it can feel like you're battling uphill through mud. But to be able to hear other people's experiences and your authenticity as well, Eliza, I think could be so, and I know is really helpful for so many parents. I know when we share this information with parents who come to us for support, the feedback has always been really, really positive and really helpful. And it's a bit like what Pina said, in the sense that getting rid of those traditional parenting techniques can be really hard and challenging, particularly from around you, maybe from your own parents who parent in a certain way, or friends. It can be really tricky. Um, and learning to try something new can be scary as well.
And also, one of the biggest things is we are living within uncertainty. I mean, I put that illustration of I don't know when it was an upsetting time, but actually, we have to sit really comfortably with a lot of uncertainty, and that is part of this journey, if you like. But I learned to say I don't know quite a lot in a positive way. I found it was really helpful in the end, actually, to say, I don't know. Are they going to do GCSEs? I don't know. Are they going to go to college? I don't know. I have to be comfortable with that. Because when I'm comfortable with that, so is my child. It doesn't mean that I'm leaving them, just to kind of spiral off into this kind of anxious uncertainty. I'm very much there as a guide, but to put any push or pressure onto that is not going to help either of us.
Thank you, Eliza. I think we're getting lots of people saying really interesting, really helpful. Thank you so much for being open, honest, and authentic, giving lots of people things to think about, I think. And one of my biggest takeaways, there's lots of them, but I've just highlighted one. We talk a lot about PDA and the traits of somebody with PDA, and I absolutely love pervasive drive for autonomy. I think that's such a lovely way
I think
to
it was
describe it.
I think it was Dr. Wen Lawson that coined that, but it's lovely, isn't it? It's really nice.
Absolutely, completely. As an organisation, Kappa First Response, I want to say a huge thank you for being with us today. It has been incredible to listen to you chat and talk and share your, I'm going to say it, journey and your family's journey with us today. Hopefully, it's helped support a lot of practitioners sitting here, and parents and grandparents as well sitting here that are thinking, okay, I've got something I can go away with. Thank you. We have recorded today's session.